Hi, I'm Frank Scruggs, and let me tell you a story about how I met Freya. I was typing on the internet one day, just just soul searching, and typed, "Is there anybody out there?" into Google search, and I got the normal response about some song from later on while driving at Kroger's. I got an email, and that email was it said, "Yes, I'm out here. Do you want to meet?" So I texted this person back, and who are you, and why would I meet with you? And she said, I have been watching your work for quite a while, and you remind me of someone. I would like to meet with you and explain some pretty interesting facts. Can you meet me at this location? And I go, well, I used to be a cab driver, and I know how to deal with weird situations, so I felt, okay, what can happen, right? So I drove out to the woods where this location was, and at the end of a paved road, the road just stopped, and there was this bank of trees on either side and an open field beyond. And I parked the car there, and I pulled off the side of the road and parked. And this was up near Romeo Plank Road in New Haven, Connecticut. I mean, in New Haven, Michigan. And so I got out of the car, and there was this weird fog rolling in, and this picnic table I hadn't noticed before. I don't know if it appeared, but I hadn't noticed it before. Was in the foreground with this fog coming up, and just this beautiful woman walks out of the fog and says, "You must be Frank." And I go, "Yeah. Who are you?" She says, "Well, I'm Freya." "Okay. I'm the one that sent you the message, and I have been watching your work, and there's some things that you need to know." And so I asked her, "This is real suspicious and weird. Who are you, and where are you from, and what is going on here?" And she goes, "I will answer all your questions, but you first must you must know that the only way I can answer your questions is if you tell people about it and call it science fiction." So this is a science fiction story. So Freya comes out of the mist and sits down at the picnic table and says, "Let's talk." And so I go sit down at the picnic table and start talking with this absolutely gorgeous woman. And so, okay, let me ask you a few questions. Who are you, and where are you from? Are you from the future or something? Or are you from, give me a break here. What's going on? She says, "Yeah, I'm from the future, about 3.5 minutes from the future." Okay. So how does that work? What do you have, a time machine? And why would you come 3.5 minutes from the future? It doesn't even make sense, okay? So she explains that time is in layers. She goes into this big explanation of if the effect of a disturbance in time travels at the speed of time, then cause and effect will never catch up with reality. the current reality, because our current experience will march on. So the grandfather paradox is basically baloney, because if you went back and killed your grandfather, you wouldn't, cause and effect would change all history behind you, but it would never catch up with you because you were proceeding at the speed of cause and effect. And so time is in layers. And they go, okay, so Freya, you're from a different layer in time? Precisely. Okay. So, why do you want to contact me? And she says, because we're right at the nexus, the change of history, a very pivotal point. And your climate scientists have the climate science wrong. In reality, okay, there's two things they left out of the climate science. One is the effect of methane. Before she explained the effect of methane and the stuff that the scientists left out, she explained why they left it out. And the reason why they left it out was because the funding had come from the oil companies through shell companies. And so they didn't even know that the oil companies were controlling the narrative of the climate science. They were so what they would pay the climate scientists to do science, but then they would say, but you can't include methane because that's imprecise. We need an accurate projection of what will happen with only CO2 change. And if you ignore methane, you ignore all the major disasters that can happen from climate change. And Freya says, will happen. Okay, so what are these things that are left out? One was methane, the effect of methane. Freya says that methane will increase to a tipping point where it adds more heat to the environment than does CO2. And our common knowledge right now is that methane is 20 times more dangerous than CO2. But our methane is based on a discrete exposure to methane, and it's divided by 100 years, where if you go steady state methane is actually nearly 200 times as bad as CO2 in the air. That's what Freya says. Okay, and so we will reach a tipping point very soon where the methane will drive the environment faster than CO2 does. That's climate mistake one. Climate mistake two was the glaciologists ignore heat transfer from, let me get this right, from geothermal and heat transfer from friction of a glacier melting, because the temperature at the boundary, at the bottom of the glacier, is colder than it is up higher in the glacier. And the dogma is that heat can't transfer from cold to hot, where heat only transfers from hot to cold. But Freya says that's wrong because of this thing that we call regelation. That's what she called it, regelation. And regelation is where ice melts under pressure at extreme cold temperatures. And the process makes liquid water at the bottom of the glacier that is supercooled. Then this water, when the glacier fractures, this water shoots up between the layers of the glacier, and the latent heat of crystallization, of it refreezing as it gets up in there, adds heat up into the glacier. So this greatly speeds up the way glaciers melt. And Freya says we're with our CO2 and methane that we're adding to the air, we're asking for 22 inches of sea level rise every year. I go, well, okay, we're asking for 20. Why don't we have sea level rise? And she says, well, did you ever drink a Slurpee? When you tilt the cup up and you drain all the water out, the ice kind of freezes up there, but then it lets loose suddenly and hits you in the face. And that's what we're looking at, the function of glaciers, where this layer of water is actually going to float them out. They will start to break loose a little bit. The friction will continue melting them. There's enough friction, she says, to melt 300 feet of water at the bottom of a mile-high glacier. And that's enough to lubricate the glacier so the whole thing will slide out like a toboggan. So she says when the glacier starts to go, it goes all at once, and about half of the mass of the glacier ends up in the water, in the ocean. Well, there's enough glaciers around the planet for 220 feet of sea level rise. So, okay, so Freya, when are we going to get 220 feet of sea level rise? And she goes, it's not determined exactly when. We don't know when this is going to happen. Even watching parallel times, you can't know when it's going to happen because it's different in every layer of time. It's different. And but in other layers of time, it is happening now. That one of the glaciers will let loose, that will send a wave around the world, and that wave will lift up other glaciers, and then they'll let loose, and we'll get a new great flood. And this is what she's warning about, the possibility of a new great flood. And this is why she contacted me. So, that's how I met Freya. That's what her message was, and that's where she's from, is, what is that, 3.5 seconds? No, 3.5 minutes, sorry, somewhere in there, in the future. Well, that's my story. I hope you liked it.